What's up guys, my name is Manik. Welcome back to the Python training presented by SECARMY. In the previous video we studied about integers, types of integers, operations performed on integers, and avoiding most common errors that you often face during integers. So today we'll be starting with lists. What are lists and the various operations that you perform on lists and a lot of stuff. So today we'll be talking about these topics only: lists, elements in lists, and accessing elements of lists. So what are lists? Lists are basically kind of a collection of different type of data types, and the data in the list don't have to relate with each other in any manner. So basically imagine a box and you have a lot of stuff in it: food, toys, cooking utensils. So lists somehow work that way. List is a kind of a box that contains different type of elements, and elements could be same or not. It depends on the creator or I should say the programmer. So lists are basically a type of an array or a collection that contains multiple number of items, or it could be one as well, and mostly it is because it is more than one. So those items can be either be alphabetical, integral, or even punctuation marks. Punctuation doesn't actually used, or I should say punctuation isn't often used, so we will just ignore that. We will focus on integers and alphabets. So lists, I'll show you how does it work. So let's just get started. First I will open the text editor that we're using throughout this training, which is Genie. So this is what the operation we performed in the previous video, which is declaring variable, declaring variable with a integral value, or I should say numerical value, performing operation on those numerical values, adding a comment and printing that operation. So today we'll be starting with lists. Let's say we have a variable, let's say names. What we will do is we will store multiple names in this, and what do we have to do? We have to create a list instead of adding a particular value. So how to create list? To create list, all you have to do is just add a square bracket and square bracket start. This square bracket start means that we are trying to initiate a creation of a list. List is basically a type of an array. In all the programming languages, or maybe not all, mostly there's a data structure called array which contains multiple items. In Python we call that a list. So we have to store item. Let's say we have 4 names, and let's those names be, and also that all the data, or I should say all the items in a list can be of different types, but the type should either be string, integral, and some basic data structures, or I should say data types. So I'll be adding names to this list, and names are often in integers, strings. So I'll be starting with double inverted comma, which often refers to string that I explained in the previous videos. So string, let the first name be John, and now I have to add a second item. What I would do is just add a comma which will separate the first item from the second item. Let's say Abraham, now Sarah, and now let's say Eric, or with a C. So this is a list with a name of the word, or I should say variable names, with 4 items in it, and those items are names of people, which is John, Abraham, Sarah, and Eric. And you might have seen that I started and ended each name with a string, or I should say double inverted comma, which refers it to as a string. So I did this. You might wonder that why don't we just add a single inverted comma at the end, like for example, okay, this. So I added 4 names in a single inverted comma mark, which is inverted comma start: John, Abraham, Sarah and Eric, and ended with the inverted comma. So therefore that there are only single inverted comma starting and close, so this all these names present in the list will be considered as a single item because they are enclosed in a single inverted comma. So what I would do is to consider it as different items. I will have to mention them, or I should say specify them as 4 different items by enclosing them 4 different times between double inverted commas or single inverted commas, doesn't matter, because both single and double inverted commas can be used to declare a string, or I should say specify a string. Okay, so this is how a list is created and items are stored in it. Now I want to print this list. So basically a print keyword, function bracket start, variable names, function bracket close. Now when I execute it, here it is. This is how a list is printed. And list is useful to often keep track of the different names in an organization. Let's say there are a huge amount of human beings working in an organization, from tens to hundreds to thousands to millions. It doesn't matter. A list can store a huge amount of items in it, from 1 to millions. It doesn't matter. List is useful that way. A list can be used to keep record of millions of people, or either items, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. So this is how list is used, because a list can be useful to keep track of records of a huge amount of data within a single variable, kind of like a database. And as in database there are table names and a lot of stuff. A table can contain a huge amount of data. This is how list works in Python, a single variable which can contain millions of data. So this is how list works. And next is elements in a list. So as I am using the keyword items again and again, so items can also be called as elements. Basically the data present in a list are known as elements. So and the thing is that every element occupies a position. Let's say there's a row of people standing in front of an office for their work done, and every person is standing in a particular position from 1 to 10, let's say. So that's why people have acquired a position in a list, and similarly item is also acquiring a position in a list, or I should say item or elements, it doesn't matter, it's one and the same thing. This, we often think that the person standing in the front is the first, whereas in items, when it comes to the case of list, it acquires the space 0. A list always starts with the position 0, and it goes on from here. The first name, which is John, it will acquire position 0, then 1, then 2, and then 3. So let's say you have to print only one element of this, which is let's say Abraham. As I said, the first is 0 and the second is 1, so we will use the element position 1 to print it. Now when I add the integer 1 in a square bracket in the print statement, let's try to execute it. It showed only the second name, which is acquired in the first position, or I should say first location. So I'm using the words position, location, space. It actually, when it comes to programming, the actual keyword is index. The index 0 is acquired by John, and index 1 is acquired by Abraham, 2 by Sarah, and 3 by Eric. So the integer I mentioned in the square bracket is an index, which tells the print statement that you have to print the element, or I should say item, that is present in the list at the first index. So this is how a list is printed. And yeah, now let's try with another index. Let's say I have 3, and according to the list the 3 is Eric. Now when I execute it, here it is, the name Eric has been printed. So this is how elements work. Now accessing elements of list, this is what I just told, accessing elements of list using index. Now let's try to access by using a single name. John. Let's try to execute it. It won't work because there is no functionality to use or to access or to print a name using simply a name in a list, either all or either using an index. So this is how list works. And okay, let's say we want to print a statement. My name is space plus, let's say you have to print a statement which contains all elements of the list. So I have created a string in the print statement which says my name is. Now I want everyone to say everyone's name to be printed in this. What I will do is add the variable names. Let's try to execute it. Okay, so as I told in the previous video that the element should be in string format, because this is a string format. So what I will do is convert this into a string format, because it is basically a list. A list can contain any type of data which can go from string to integers. So we have to specify to print it as a string. And to convert, I told you in the previous video how to convert, which is by adding the str command along with the variable. Now when we execute it, my name is this. It is basically printed as a string. So the entire list is often executed by this. Now let's try by using a single element. Name, let's say 0, which is John. Now when I execute it, again it is showing an error. Sorry, I made a mistake of spellings. Okay, my name is John. John is a string in the list. Now when I executed it by using index value, which is 0, so it shows the item present in that index value. Let me break it down in an easy language. Let's say I have an item John which is at index 0, because items in a list start with 0. So what I did was told the print statement to print an item from the list of variable names. What item? The item present at index 0, which is John. So what it did was print the statement my name is plus the first element, or I should say the element at index 0 of the list called names, which is John. Now when I execute it, it shows this: my name is John. Only single element is printed. So this is how list works, and you can use any type of index to print this statement. So I'll be ending this video here only, and I'll tell you more about operations performed on list in the next video. Before going, I have a task for you. Store a number of items in a list by which goes by any variable that you want, and to print that list one by one. Okay, so print the list one by one, and not actually a list, to print the items in a list one by one. Now the next task is to concatenate those items with a string, just like I did here. I concatenated the item at index 0 with this string format. Do this with the all of the items that you just created, or I should say declared in a list. And if you have any kind of doubt, you can contact me in the social handles I told you in the first video, or in the first video. So see you all later. Thank you so much for being with me.